everyone. My name is Julie Stump, and I am a Heart Center Nurse Coordinator here at St. Louis Children's Hospital. I'm joined today by Rebby Grantham. Rebby is the author of the upcoming book, Lanterns on the Dark Path, Your Guide to Advocating Your Special Needs Child. She also shares about parenting children with special needs on her website, rebbygrantham.com. She is currently the president of the Special School District Parent Advisory Council, serving all 24,000 children in St. Louis County who receive special education services. You may have been at our recent Dose of Magic event. We discussed the topic of navigating the school system. So for those of you who weren't able to join us, today we'd like to continue that conversation. Feel free to send us your questions as you watch. So to begin, Rebby, thanks for joining us today. We're really glad to have you.
My pleasure.
Rebby, can you speak to the one key shift you believe all parents need to make in their approach to dealing with the school system, and how making that shift change your own experience for advocating for your children?
Absolutely. I think the main message that I want to get across to parents is that you have to be an active participant in the process. This isn't something that the school district does and you just passively receive. You really have to be actively engaged in every step of the process. And my own story highlights this example. So when we started suspecting that my oldest son, Max, was going to need special education services, we had been communicating with the school. I'd been as proactive as I knew how to be, building a rapport with the teachers and everyone that I was coming into contact with, talking about Max and his issues. And so we requested that he be considered for formal evaluation. And my career has been spent leading teams. I'm an ex-Air Force officer and have spent 15 years negotiating corporate contracts. So I know my way around a boardroom. I know my way around a meeting. But my husband and I walked into that first meeting and we were just going to see what the school had decided to do. And we got in there and they made a decision that we weren't expecting and that we really didn't agree with. And it wasn't until I hit the parking lot that my brain kicked back into gear and I thought, what the heck just happened in there? And so I started getting myself smart and kind of recalibrating how we were going to work with the school, because we really needed to change the trajectory of this, because my husband and I still firmly believed that Max needed these special education services. So the next time we went in to speak with the school, we expected to be active participants in making that decision with the school. So I wasn't just going in to find out what they had decided. I was going in wanting to have a discussion and be part of the decision-making process. And so in boiling that down and telling parents that that's what they need to focus on, the best news is that your skill set doesn't really matter. I had all those skills that should have made me formidable in that environment, and it didn't help me because I went in passively expecting to have the thing that I wanted handed to me. But once you start actively engaging in the process, regardless of your education level, regardless of your background, if you go in expecting not in an arrogant way, but just knowing that there's a place for you in the process, for you to actively participate in the process, then you can change the dynamic of those meetings so that you play that active role and can help guide the process so that it's the best outcome for your individual child. And then you can start working on some skills that might amplify or enhance that mindset that you have. But the key is really going in expecting to be the CEO, the leader on this team, because if you think about it, everyone else is going to change. The teachers come in and out every year. Eventually your child will go from elementary school or preschool to elementary school to middle school. So there's going to be changes constantly in that team, except for your child and you. So you really have to take that ownership and right from the start and be an active leader on the team.
Great. I appreciate you sharing your personal story. So you talk about parents changing their mindset and working proactively with the school. So what are some of these critical skills or habits that parents should, develop or work on to support their role as a leader on the IEP team?
Absolutely. So the three core skills that I like to start parents off on focusing on is team building, communication, and preparation. And they kind of all intertwine together. You can't really have great communication without great team building, and great team building without great communication or being prepared for it. So I'll talk about all three kind of collectively here. But when I say team building, I really don't mean cheesy icebreakers. Like, it's not about playing a game, but it's really about approaching the school and trying to make them your ally in achieving your ultimate goal, which is to make sure that your child has the right resources that they need in order to achieve their version of success. And that's going to change year by year, child to child, whether you're talking medical or educational. But you need to be working with the providers that you that are assigned to your team. You don't always get a choice of it, whether it's a teacher or the school psychologist, whoever that is, and really do your best to create an ally out of them. And a couple of ways that I do that is by making sure that my communication is open and honest. I don't play games with the teachers. I've spoken to other parents who have tried to almost like trick teachers to see if what the teacher really felt about their child, or trying to get a read on the situation. One parent was saying how she would introduce herself at the parent-teacher night and say, "Oh, I'm the mother of the smartest kid in your class." And if you put yourself in the teacher's shoes for a minute, there's no way that teacher felt anything but trapped, because there's no right answer to that question. She was going to guess wrong. And so that teacher is now immediately on guard with both the parents and with the child, because she's not sure what that relationship looks like. It hasn't been open and honest from the beginning. So I really tell parents, don't play games with your teacher, and don't change things at home, be it medication or therapies or anything, without giving the school a heads up. And that's going on medication or coming off of medication. We decided to do a med-free summer for my boys. And I didn't make that step without talking to the school counselor or the camp director first, saying, we're considering doing this. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have the right staff in place to manage this? And making sure that he knew that the communication lines back to me were open, so that if there was any sort of an issue, he knew he could reach out to me immediately. So the other piece of really building that team is just being professional. And again, my training is in negotiations and in really how to hold your own in a meeting and in a discussion. So we're a visual people, and first impressions count. And so I always tell parents, don't walk into the school in yoga pants and a ponytail, because the people that you're going to be meeting with are going to be in business casual at minimum. They're there for work. And so you want to visually look like you belong at that table, and that you're on an equal footing with those other people at the table. And so that they visually go, yes, he or she belongs here. Yes, he or she has a place in this discussion and part in making the decision. And another part of being professional is that preparedness piece, that third key skill. Having all of your information pulled together and organized so that you aren't this hot mess walking in with papers all over the place and going, oh wait, yeah, I think I jotted that down on a Post-it note. But really thinking through each of the meetings that you're going to be going into as part of the process of getting the services and writing an individual education plan, think through what's the purpose of this next meeting, what are the pieces of information that I would need to have pulled together, and then having those at your fingertips when you walk in is going to make you calmer, more confident and poised, and again, lend to that air of professionalism so that you can be efficient in the meeting and just really be perceived as a peer to the people who are in the room.
Great information. Before we get to our last question, don't forget to submit your questions for a chance to win an awesome prize. Finally, Rebby, can you speak to some of the resources available both from special school district if families are living in St. Louis County, and then other resources that are available if they're not living in the St. Louis County?
Sure. So we're really lucky that here in St. Louis County, we have the special school district that is an umbrella over all of the 22 partner school districts in St. Louis County. And because the resources are centralized, they really have some amazing resources for families and parents. So there's a parent education department that is is through SSD. They have a lending library of books and videos and other technology that parents can check out. And it's as simple as emailing them saying, do you have this book? And they will send it through interoffice mail and it'll show up in your kid's backpack. You can go in and talk to them. They provide free seminars or classes on a variety of topics, from getting organized for, getting all your information organized to, specific things about autism or dyslexia or medically complex issues, those types of things. So the different disabilities or classifications. So there's a lot of information there that covers a wide breadth of topics, and those classes are free. I don't know if I mentioned that, but a lot of those seminars are provided free of charge. So the website is just ssdmo.org. And if you go there, there's a cool tools section that provides a lot of guides and the calendar of events. Through the Parent Advisory Council, which you mentioned I'm the president of this year. Yeah. There's also ways for parents to connect. So our website links off of that ssdmo.org website. So I would really encourage parents to check out that website as a starting place to see what kind of resources are available, and they will really bend over backwards to get information out to them. If you're not in St. Louis County, I really recommend just starting with your school district and starting to ask questions. There's always going to be a director of student services. Sometimes there's a director of special education within the individual school districts, but just start asking questions. And asking questions really is not a show of weakness or anything in the situation. The more educated you are, the better you'll be able to advocate for your child. So I would say if there's a children's hospital in your area, a lot of times the providers can point you in in the right direction. Or some of the national organizations for whatever disability or issue that your child might be struggling with, they're good places to start as well.
Great, thank you. We do have one question from one of our viewers, from Paula. Her question is, when you change schools, do you need an IEP, or does an IEP move from school to school, or do they need a new one?
So IEPs generally do move from school to school, but it's not necessarily a seamless process. Each state regulates the different classifications within an IEP. So we moved from Chicago to St. Louis. So the classification on my oldest's IEP that was established in Illinois didn't translate one for one to here in Missouri. So what happened when we moved into our school district here is that they immediately matched the services that we had in our IEP, but we had to go back through the full evaluation process here to re-qualify under a classification that was available here in Missouri. So yes, they do move. Most school districts honor it and will not stop services while they're doing the evaluations, but they have to go through their own process if it's a classification that doesn't transfer one-to-one. An educational diagnosis of autism is pretty easy because most states recognize that. We just happen to have one that was more appropriate for a younger child in Illinois and didn't translate exactly here to Missouri. So, but that's a great question because it can be a very nerve-wracking thing to move when you have kids who have an IEP and have services in place.
Okay.
We have another question from Michelle. Would you suggest an IEP and a 504 plan for a medically fragile child with developmental needs or just an IEP? My son's school is just working off an IEP at this time. Can you repeat that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the question
About a medically fragile child. So I think the question I'm hearing is, he has an IEP. Do they need a 504 plan as well, in addition to that, for accommodations?
Yeah, usually school districts can accommodate what a 504 plan would provide under the umbrella of an IEP. So I don't know that you would need to have both. And without knowing the specifics of a situation, it's hard to answer this individual's question directly. But in general, 504s are managed at the school level. So where you might see a 504 is a child who is or has diabetes and might need a snack, where snacks aren't allowed, but this child gets an extra snack before PE or what have you. Or they just need a little bit of extra help. An IEP is really when they need individualized or altered instruction in order to access the curriculum. So it's more, the IEP is really for when you need the content or the way the content is provided changed so that the child can be successful. Whereas, say that child who just has diabetes and doesn't have any sort of developmental delay might be perfectly fine with a 504 because they don't need help understanding math or writing or any of those academic issues. So depending on what the needs are, you might need to have both. But in general, they could probably do everything that was necessary under the IEP umbrella. There's a section for just other accommodations that they can provide. So, but that's a good question because they do really serve two different purposes. It just depends on what your child needs.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Rebby.
Absolutely.
It doesn't look like we have any other questions. So one last thing before we wrap up. Where can people find and connect with you?
Sure. So on Facebook, the page that I run is called Artfully Living Well.
Okay.
And, but as you mentioned earlier, my website is rebbygrantham.com. So Rebby is just REBE. And then Grantham, GRANTHAM.com. And then mostly I'm active on Instagram, but I have that linked to my Artfully Living Well Facebook page. So, and you can also find me through the special school district on their leadership tab. It will connect you to the Parent Advisory Council, and people can reach out to me there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.